Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for the webinar today. We're still waiting on a few more folks to join, so we'll get started at 2 minutes past the hour, so just hold tight. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar focuses on Action for Healthy Kids' 2018-2019 School Grants for Healthy Kids grant opportunities, specifically our Parents for Healthy Kids grant. I will be one of our presenters for today's session. My name is Christina Shelton, and I'm a field coordinator at Action for Healthy Kids. My colleague, Sean Wade, is our manager of volunteer initiatives, and he'll be leading a section of today's webinar as well. We also have our colleague, Heidi Milby, our director of school health programs, who will be assisting and supporting us through the webinar technology and answering your questions on the back end. Let's review some logistics before we get started. Once you're linked in, you'll see a control panel usually on the right side of your screen. You can use your telephone or speakers to listen to the presentation, but everyone is muted to avoid static and background interference. There is a dialog box at the bottom of your control panel, and here's where you can type in questions into the dialog box as we're going along, and we'll try to get them answered later in the presentation and throughout the presentation. If we don't get to your question during the presentation, just know that we will follow up with you after the webinar today via email. Today's webinar is being recorded. Links to the recording and the handouts will be sent to you within 2 to 3 business days after the webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's the agenda for today's 45-minute webinar. First, I'll give you a little background about Action for Healthy Kids and the work that we do with schools, and then we'll briefly cover all of our 18-19 grant opportunities, while spending most of the time talking about our Parents for Healthy Kids grants. These grants are associated with our Parents for Healthy Kids initiative, so we'll cover what that entails as well. Later on, we'll discuss project ideas, how to apply, important deadlines, and give you some tips for applying. As I mentioned earlier, we will be answering questions throughout the webinar, and we'll answer some at the end as well. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Sean, who is going to share a bit more about Action for Healthy Kids.
Great, thanks, Christina. We'll go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to give you a little background on Action for Healthy Kids. AFHK's vision is a world in which every kid is healthy, active, and ready to learn. Action for Healthy Kids fights childhood obesity, undernourishment, and physical inactivity by helping schools become healthier places. We are moms, dads, teachers, students, school and community leaders, and school wellness experts, and we've all banded together to create healthier learning environments for our children. We believe that everyone has a part to play in ending the nation's childhood obesity epidemic. Our programs, tools, and resources really help to make that possible. Our goal is to create communities where children learn how to make healthy choices from the minute they walk in the front door of the school to the minute they leave at the end of the school day. We were founded in 2002 by former Surgeon General David Satcher. Today we have more than 120,000 members and constituents in our network. We also partner with dozens of professional associations, government agencies, and corporations at both the national and local levels. So as you just heard, Action for Healthy Kids, we focus on schools. So why schools? Schools reach most children and adolescents in a community and provide kids with opportunities to really practice healthy behaviors. Kids spend right around 1,200 hours per year in school. So a lot of time where we can talk to them about school health and healthy behaviors. Teachers, administrators, and school staff are all key role models, and so are parent volunteers in school. Curriculum standards for health usually include nutrition and physical education. So shouldn't our policies, practices, and climate in the school reflect those standards rather than conflicting with them? We try to give schools really concrete opportunities and tips and ways to put those practices into place. And schools show kids what we value and what is important in our community. So those are some really good talking points for you if you encounter some skeptical members of your school community, or if you're struggling to gain that administrative support that's so crucial to making this happen. These points can really reinforce why school health and wellness simply makes sense. Another way to garner support is by connecting your health and wellness work to the learning connection. That is, that kids who are healthy and have access to regular physical activity learn better. I mention this because our school grants are not just about making kids healthier. They are also about helping kids be better equipped to learn. We know that kids who eat better achieve academically. Studies have shown that undernourished children tend to have low energy, are often irritable, and have difficulty concentrating. They also score lower on vocabulary, reading comprehension, and arithmetic tests. Now we want to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about yourself so we can have a better idea of who all is on the call with us today. So we'll go ahead and put up a poll here and ask you if your school has ever applied for an Action for Healthy Kids grant. So there's the grant choices that we've had in the past up there now. And I do want to point out that this is the first year that we've had the Parents for Healthy Kids grants. Last year, our parent grants were rolled into the Game On grant. So if you received a parent grant last year through Game On, go ahead and answer A, that yes, you have applied for a Game On grant. And if you're not sure about whether your school has ever received or applied or received an Action for Healthy Kids grant, you can just go ahead and answer, I'm not sure. They're the last option there. We'll leave that open for just another couple of seconds, and then I will pass it back over to Christina to talk through some of the basics of our grant program and Parents for Healthy Kids.
Okay, it looks like we've had about 80% of folks voted. We'll give you another few seconds, and then we'll close it out.
All right, thanks, Heidi. And it looks like the most common answer is that that you've never applied for an Action for Healthy Kids grant. So lots of new folks on the call today, which is great to hear. Christina, I'll pass it over to you, and you can take it away.
Okay, thanks, Sean. All right, so now that we've covered a little background on who we are and why we work with schools, let's talk about grants. Our grant awards range from $500 to $3,000. We'll award grants to K-12 schools, parent groups like PTOs or PTAs or other parent committees, and school health and wellness teams. And a quick note here, unfortunately, grants cannot be awarded to community-based or nonprofit organizations. These grants are intended to be awarded to schools and school groups. Also of note, K through 12 schools simply refers to schools that serve any grades K through 12. It does not have to be a K-12 institution where all grades are served. Grants may be awarded to elementary, middle, or high schools. If you are an early childhood center that serves pre-K as well, we can fund your school only if you have kindergarten or higher grades, and grant funds benefit that population. If you have further questions about your school's eligibility, please enter your questions into the question box and we'll address them for you. Let's talk a little more specifically about the grant types that we have available for this year. We're going to start off with our breakfast grants. There are two breakfast grant opportunities available for the 2018-2019 school year. Our breakfast startup grants are for schools starting a new alternative breakfast model, such as breakfast in the classroom or grab and go. And the effort here is to increase breakfast participation. These grants range from $2,000 to $3,000 in grant funding. Our sustainability grants are available only to schools funded for school breakfast in 2017 and 2018 to continue to build on previous implementation of alternative and universal breakfast. We'll provide more information in the appropriate links after today's webinar if you'd like to learn more about these breakfast funding opportunities. And also I'll note here that we did have a breakfast grant webinar that was hosted on Tuesday, and we'll be sharing that recording link as well. For the physical activity and nutrition grants, we have two opportunities available. Both grant types include physical activity and nutrition, so schools should apply for a project that includes both components in their grant. The Parents for Healthy Kids grant requires a parent leader as well as a school-level co-lead. And it's critical to note here that although these grants are called Parents for Healthy Kids grants, any family member or person in a parent type of role can apply for these grants. It can be aunts, uncles, grandmothers, foster parents, or other individuals supporting and championing for a healthier school environment in their school. For the purpose of today's webinar, I'll be saying parents, but please remember that this grant is inclusive in nature. Our Game On grants requires a school-level applicant as well as the names and commitments of the principal, PE teacher, and food service manager. Only specific states are eligible, and we'll cover the eligible states for our Parents for Healthy Kids grants in a few slides, as well as discuss in more detail the requirements of the grant itself. And also, too, I want to take a moment to point out that schools cannot apply for both a Game On and Parents for Healthy Kids grant. Schools must choose one of the physical activity and nutrition grants to which they'd like to apply. Schools can apply for a breakfast grant in either the Parents for Healthy Kid or Game On grant. Let's talk a little bit about Parents for Healthy Kids. Parents for Healthy Kids is a national initiative created for parents by parents, offering resources to help parents and caregivers become effective change agents in school and school health. And this includes the website and the online community forum, school grants, and trainings. Parents for Healthy Kids is presented by Action for Healthy Kids and the National PTA and is sponsored by Aldi. The Parents for Healthy Kids website and initiative is an online hub for parents by parents. When you go to the website, what you can do is you can learn about becoming a champion for school health. You can access free tools and tips to help you create change. You can get inspired by other parent champions, connect with parents from across the country, learn about local parent trainings and get involved, and of course, apply for a grant to help your school. And you can check out and visit Parents for Healthy Kids anytime by going to parentsforhealthykids.org. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Sean, who will tell us a little bit more about the Parents for Healthy Kids grant.
Great, thanks, Christina. Okay, so now let's combine what you just learned about our grant program and what you just learned about Parents for Healthy Kids to get more detail about Parents for Healthy Kids grants. These grants require both a physical activity and a nutrition component. So schools can receive up to $1,000 in grant funding to address those two areas. $500 grants will be offered to previously funded schools as well. So if you've been funded in the past, you'll most likely get, if you are chosen to receive funding again, that would most likely come at the lower level, that $500 level. These grants, as I mentioned, they do require a parent applicant to lead and oversee the implementation of the grant project itself. The parent applicant can be an individual parent or a family member, a member of your school's PTA or PTO or other school parent group, or a parent participating on the school's local wellness team. And again, like Christina mentioned, we say parent a lot here, but that is really referring to any family member that is related to the student or in charge of the student and can, that those folks all can apply. The application also requires a school level co-lead to work in partnership with the parent type applicant. This co-lead should be in a position such as, but not limited to, a principal, a teacher, school nurse, food service manager, or counselor. The co-lead should also be an individual who is committed to supporting the work of the grant and a person who can assist with collaborating and coordinating the programmatic work with stakeholders both in and out of the school building. So someone that can help get decisions made. The specific eligible states are identified here on your screen, so you can see those there. Please note, though, that if your state is not eligible, so if you don't see your state in that tinted blue color, you may be eligible for a Game On grant. So make sure you're checking out actionforhealthykids.org for more information on those. We'll also send additional info on Game On grants after today's webinar. Christina mentioned that we had a couple webinars earlier in the week, and we'll send the links to the recordings for both of those as well on Breakfast and Game On. Also, it's important to highlight that our priority areas for the Parents for Healthy Kids grant include schools within 15 miles of an Aldi store. So for some of you, your entire state may be eligible there, that you can see it highlighted in blue. Others, only part of the state may be eligible. But if you're not sure whether your school fits into this 15-mile priority area, that's not a problem. Go to Aldi's website there. You can see the link and enter your school's address to identify the closest Aldi store to your school. Remember, though, that all schools in these eligible states are able to apply, but it's just that the priority will be given to those schools within that 15-mile radius of an Aldi store. If you do have questions, please go ahead and enter them into the question box or email us after today's webinar. We are happy to help answer any of those questions about eligibility. Next, I want to review some of the programmatic deliverables of this grant. In other words, these are the things that should happen during your grant project and funding cycle. Awarded schools must implement at least one physical activity strategy and at least one nutrition initiative. So I'll talk about physical activity first, that's on the left side of your screen there, and then I'll talk a little bit about the nutrition side. So the physical activity strategy must increase at least one of the following items that you see on the screen there. So daily physical activity minutes, those must be increased to at least 30 minutes or a 10% increase if your school already has more than 30 minutes of daily physical activity. The percentage of students participating in physical activity initiatives. So for example, making sure that classrooms are doing classroom physical activity breaks or that more grade levels have access to after school physical activity programming. Or a percentage of time students are engaging in moderate to vigorous physical activity. So in other words, that would look like increasing activity levels during PE or recess. So that's the physical activity side. For the nutrition initiative, schools must increase or improve at least one of those following items that you see there. Student knowledge of healthy foods and beverages, student consumption of healthy foods and beverages, student attitudes around healthy foods and beverages, or just the overall school nutrition environment. So in a few minutes, Christina is going to walk you through some of the strategies that you can use to make these deliverables happen. Other programmatic deliverables of the grant include providing information to students and parents on the importance of physical activity and nutrition, engaging other parents and families around your school health initiatives, so as volunteers or inviting them to events, working toward becoming a health promoting school, and just a note to give you a little bit more background about what that means when we say health promoting school. One of the goals of the grant is to work toward each school that receives it becoming a health promoting school. It's a school that strives to provide a healthy environment for all students, staff, and families. I'll mention this on the next slide, but we'll ask you to complete an assessment tool called the School Health Index, and that can help you and your school figure out if you are ready to be classified as an official health promoting school, or if you're already at that level. There are a couple national school health recognition programs through the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, where your school can apply to get official recognition for being health promoting. And you'll receive all this information and more about becoming a health promoting school and resources about how to make that happen as part of this grant. In addition, the last point there, all funded schools are required to host an Every Kid Healthy Week event during April of 2019. And for that, I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, but that's just joining schools from across the country and celebrating school health achievements. So reporting deliverables of the Parents for Healthy Kids grants include submitting terms and conditions sheet to accept the grant awards should your school receive funding, completing the school health index, as I mentioned on the last slide at the beginning and the end of the grant, so that you can kind of see the progress that you've been able to make through the school year, completing a midterm report with 2 photos that's due in December, and completing an Every Kid Healthy Week event survey that's due in March of next year for the April Every Kid Healthy Week event, and then completing a final report with 3 photos submitted due in May of 2019, so at the end of next school year. It's important to highlight here that ideally the grant funding should go directly to the school. We can, as Christina mentioned before, give a check to a PTA or parent group, but they do need to have a tax ID number, and we also require that the individual school signs off on the grant agreement, since the school will be directly engaged in the grant. So if you do have any further questions about that, please connect with us after today's webinar. As I mentioned before, the requirement of hosting an Every Kid Healthy Week event during April of next year. This is Every Kid Healthy Week is an annual celebration that's always during the 4th week of April and is recognized as an official national health observance listed on the National Health Observances calendar. So I mentioned that it is officially during the 4th week of April every year, but we do have quite a bit of flexibility. So if your school is off on break or has testing during that 4th week of April, you can also host events before or after that. There's a cushion there to give you some flexibility. Every Kid Healthy Week focuses on the nation's childhood obesity epidemic and its solutions, sound nutrition, regular physical activity, and health-promoting school programs that help students be better prepared to learn and succeed academically. And it provides some volunteer opportunities for parents and families to get involved in solutions. So all awarded schools are asked to host an Every Kid Healthy Week event with a family-friendly, health-promoting event during April of 2019. And just so you know a little bit more about Every Kid Healthy Week, since we launched Every Kid Healthy Week in 2013, more than 5,000 schools across the country have hosted Every Kid Healthy Week events in 48 states with over 2.5 million participants. These are family health fair nights, renovating school playgrounds, school garden projects, healthy food taste tests, and they all kind of go towards celebrating school accomplishments around school health and bringing together teachers, administrators, food service staff, parents, families, and community members to really roll up their sleeves and get involved in these programs. So it's a cool event, and it's a great time to celebrate what you've been doing. So now I'll pass it back to Christina so she can discuss some initiatives and projects that you can implement to help meet the grant deliverables.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Heidi, I'm gonna just take a quick break here. Is there any question that we should address before we move on, or questions?
Sure. So we've been able to address most of the questions on a one-on-one basis, but there are a couple that might be relevant for the rest of the group. We had a question about from someone about asking if we send out email reminders for grant deliverables, and just want to emphasize that yes, of course, we alert schools usually about 6 weeks before a deadline, and then we'll send subsequent reminders thereafter. So no need to remember all of these dates. We're definitely will support you in that process and getting those reports submitted on time. So I wanted to note that. And then another question that was asked is if a school is also a nonprofit organization. So for example, if you're a therapeutic day school or another school where you might be classified as a nonprofit, but you are in fact a school, those schools are still eligible as well. So the key there is if you are some type of school, you are eligible for these grants. And then we had a couple of questions just come in, actually, Christina, that hopefully you and Sean can address. One of the questions is, can you clarify about the parent leader for the program?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And this is a question we know is going to probably come up a lot. So yeah, the parent leader is a person who is going to be overseeing the implementation of the grant project. We're going to, in the next slide, talk a little bit about what those projects can look like. But again, as we mentioned, this doesn't have to necessarily be a traditional parent. It can be an aunt or an uncle or a caregiver, a grandmother, foster parent. So someone who can sort of step into that parent leadership role and oversee the grant. Now, of course, we don't expect that parent person to do this project on their own. We like to see our parent leaders to really work with their school wellness team and also that school level co-lead. And remember, that's a required component of the grant, and that is a school specific person who has agreed to be a supporter and a champion of your grant project. So it could be a principal, it could be a teacher, it could be a school nurse. So I hope that gives some clarity. And Heidi, if you have anything else to add, or Sean, we can take a moment to add that in as well.
Nothing to add here. We do have a couple of other questions that have come in, Christina, if we have some time. So we did have a question about, are these grants for a district as a whole or a school? And I can answer that quickly. So these are intended to be school level grants. However, we have had in the past where a district representative might apply on behalf of multiple schools. The way our system is set up is, if that is the case, each individual school must get a grant application submitted, but it can, for example, be the same project for multiple schools in the district. So for example, if there is a parent engagement coordinator at the district level that's trying to implement parent programming in 5 schools, for example, that individual could in fact apply for those 5 schools. He or she would have to submit a separate application for each of those schools. But again, these are intended to be school level grants, but you can apply for multiple schools within a district. Christina, Sean, anything to add to that?
No, I think you did a nice job of summarizing that. Yeah, and if anyone has any other questions after the webinar, don't forget that you can always loop in with us after today and we can provide some more clarity.
Okay, and just a couple of others really quickly. We had a question about, can private schools apply, especially private schools that maybe don't have a wellness policy? The answer is yes, private schools are also eligible. You don't have to have a policy or any wellness initiatives currently taking place. It's a great opportunity to kickstart some of those programs, so wanted to clarify that. And then finally, we did have a question about the distance to an Aldi store. Someone had asked they're slightly above 15 miles away from an Aldi store, and just want to clarify that as Sean had mentioned, that is schools that are within 15 miles might receive priority. But for example, if you are 18 miles, 20 miles, 25, even 30 miles, you'll still be considered for these grants. And even beyond that, we consider all schools in these eligible states eligible for these grants. It's just possible that schools that are closer to Aldi's might receive priority. So I highly encourage you to apply. If you are kind of unsure about your distance, let us know in the chat box or let us know down the line as you apply, and we can provide a more specific recommendation based on your specific situation. And that's all for now, Christina.
Okay, great questions, everybody. Thanks, Heidi. All right, so let's get into a little bit more detail about the grant initiatives and some of the projects that you all can choose from through the application. So as you move through the application, you'll notice that we ask you to classify your physical activity and nutrition initiative into the categories listed on your screen. So for physical activity, you'll see the options as indoor and outdoor recess, play space or gymnasium refurbishing, classroom-based physical activity, before and after school or after school programming, and walk and or bike to school initiatives. For nutrition, you'll see the options are school gardens, healthy fundraisers, classroom celebrations, classroom rewards, taste tests, water access, and cooking classes. You'll also note here there's a little bit of a difference if you've applied with Game On in the past. The Parents for Healthy Kids grant, they don't allow the applicant to choose an other category for the physical activity or nutrition initiative. And I wanted just to give you a little bit of background here, because the logic behind this choice of encouraging parents to pick from the given options is because we're really looking for best practices and manageable projects to be led by parents and family members. So these are the grant projects that are known for parent leaders to have the greatest impact and the greatest success over the long term. And if you don't see the focus of your grant project here, be sure to check out our Game On grant opportunities, because that grant itself has a longer, more detailed list of potential grant initiatives. Further along in the application, when you pull that up and when you get in through the process, you'll notice that later on you'll have the opportunity to describe your grant project in more detail and then start to provide a narrative about how it fits into the grant categories and into the deliverable requirements that Sean just had previously mentioned. So we'll talk a little bit more about some project ideas for your physical activity options. Before I do that, I do want to mention that while we do require that all grants have a nutrition and a physical activity initiative, we do not require that schools spend grant funds equally on both initiatives. So you may find that you need to spend the majority of your funding on your physical activity initiative, and that's totally fine, as long as you are also focusing on nutrition in some capacity as well. So some of the great ideas that we've seen with our grant-funded schools in the past include projects focusing on physical activity through programs like indoor recess carts, kinesthetic learning labs, fitness and yoga rooms, monthly family fitness nights, running and walking clubs, new and refurbished play spaces, and stability or wobble chairs. And note that this is not an exhaustive list. We're always looking for creative, innovative, and exciting new projects. But these are some of the ones that we tend to see through some of our previously funded grant programs. Just a few quotes here about what some of the schools, what some of our schools are saying about our grants. And this is from our current grant cycle. You'll see at the first one, this is a superintendent of a school district talking about a bike to school program having a profound impact on their students and integrating bike safety and encouraging them to be physically active. And at the bottom, I love this one. This is a 5th grade student talking about a morning walking club and feeling like he's getting more exercise and energized for his school day. These are some examples of our nutrition initiatives, again, that we see some of our previously funded schools being excited to share their best practices and what they're doing. The Rethink Your Drink campaign is a common theme in some of our schools, and one that we know works really well. We also see schools working on projects that focus on healthy food taste tests. School gardening is extremely popular, healthy fundraising and school and classroom celebrations, integrating non-food rewards and healthy incentive programs. Promoting water and increasing water access is also becoming increasingly popular over the recent years. And then, of course, always we see schools looking to implement cooking classes and recipe contests into that nutrition piece of their grant project. And again, just to wrap up with a quote here, I love this quote. This is a parent in Iowa talking about their garden club and trying out different types of squash and pumpkins, and then integrating that into their composting and learning how to recycle. And I think this quote it's great because it really shows a comprehensive view of nutrition and how something like a garden club can incorporate so many pieces and elements of learning. And if you're still thinking about some project ideas and you're not totally sure yet what you want to work on, I do recommend that you check out our Parents for Healthy Kids and our Game On program for other project activity ideas that you can include. And even if you already know what you want to apply for, check out these resources anyways, because they really do provide some great resources and language that you can reference in your application. If you go to parentsforhealthykids.org, you can check out inspirational stories and videos, hot topics. And there's also a really neat community forum where you can share and exchange ideas and tips and go create a parent-to-parent dialogue, and you can hear what other parents are doing across the country. And then, of course, our Game On program. This is, as we had been mentioning, this is a grant project as well, but it's also a framework and a program that we have on our Action for Healthy Kids website. This is a free online guide that provides all of the information and resources that you need to host successful school wellness programs. When you go to our Game On program, what you'll find is over 80 Eat Better, Move More activity challenges and activities for every aspect of your school, whether it's in the gymnasium or the classroom or the front office staff. There's some really great, exciting ways that you can take a holistic look at comprehensive school wellness programming. So here are a few examples of some projects that we would fund. I think it's always nice to know, like, what are we looking for and kind of what has worked in the past. And just note that these are 3 examples that demonstrate initiatives that have ongoing nutrition and physical activity components. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but rather just give you some ideas what we look for. So the first one, our school is building a walking trail and hosting quarterly health fairs along the trail to promote healthy eating and encouraging families to use the trail. This is a great one, right? Because it incorporates physical activity and nutrition, and it's ongoing. You can see that they have activities planned throughout the year. Our class will do a monthly taste test and physical activity breaks 3 to 5 times per week. And then the last one, our school will do daily morning announcements. And we see here that they would also be incorporating some family fitness nights for both students and parents. So a couple of examples of projects that we're not so excited about and probably wouldn't fund. If you take a look at the first one, our school will start a running club for first grade students. And if this is a K through 5 school or a K through 8 school, and we see that there's only first grade students being kind of targeted for the grant project, this initiative doesn't really include the majority of students, and this would sort of be a red flag for us. So we really like to see programmatic work that reaches the majority of students or as many students as possible within the school. If you look at the second one, our school will host a taste test during every Kid Healthy Week. And the reason here is that the project is missing an ongoing and nutrition initiative. Remember, we want to see nutrition initiatives that are more than just a one-time thing. The more opportunities students have to learn about healthy eating, the more likely they will be to internalize those nutrition concepts and really be successful over time. And then the last one, our school will host a family fitness night. Again, this is great. Hosting a family fitness night is a great idea, but it's not an ongoing physical activity initiative. Change that change that one-time family fitness night to a quarterly event or a monthly event, and then you've got yourself a really great application. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean, who is going to walk us through steps to apply through our school portal.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. Okay, so now that we've covered the deliverables and some of the initiatives that you can launch and some project ideas that Christina walked you through and kind of what we're looking for and what we might not be looking for, now you are ready to apply. So here are the steps that you'll need to follow. First, you'll complete the paper application with your school health team members. We encourage doing this with the team from the get-go. That really kind of encourages that buy-in and support from the rest of the community at the school. If you don't have a school health team yet, that's fine, that's great. Use the grant as an opportunity to form one. We also ask that you pay attention to the character count, not the word count, as many of the questions do have the character count limits. Next, write the application as if the person reviewing it knows nothing about the issue. So we really want to make sure that we fully understand your project. So really kind of write it as though it's an audience that doesn't know anything about the school or what you've already started or what you have going on right now. But consider maybe even having an external reviewer, somebody that's not part of the school health team or part of the school community, read through the application to make sure that it makes sense to an outside individual. And then finally, you'll enter and submit the grant application into the Action for Healthy Kids online portal. I'll talk you through using that portal step by step in just a moment. Because we have this wonderful technology and online grant portal, no paper applications are accepted, but we do encourage you to begin entering your grant application in the portal sooner rather than later so that we can resolve any technical issues early on if they do happen to occur. And as I mentioned earlier, starting that with a paper application as a school health team is a great idea too. Okay, so when you're ready to submit the application online, go ahead and navigate over to the Parents for Healthy Kids website that you see on the screen there, and click on Parents for Healthy Kids Grants. That's usually right on the front homepage of the Parents for Healthy Kids website. Then you'll scroll down to step 4 under How to Apply and click on Login to create an account in the Action for Healthy Kids school portal. So if you already have an account, that's great. So if you've applied for a grant in the past, completed a school health index, registered an Everett Kid Healthy Week event, you may already have an account, so you can log in there. If not, then we'll ask you to create an account. So clicking on that link takes you to our Action for Healthy Kids school portal where applications are submitted. This is, if you don't have an account there, it's where schools complete the school health index, register Everett Kid Healthy Week events, update your school information, tons more resources, tons more that you can do in the portal there as well. Creating a new login is super easy. You'll be asked to provide your name, email, and then create a password, and that's it. As I mentioned, if you have done anything on the school portal in the past, you can use that same login that you've used before. Once you log in, this is the screen that you will see right there, that homepage. I find it helpful if I'm ever lost in the portal, and you can kind of get down rabbit holes sometimes, but clicking on home in that top left-hand corner really helps kind of reorient myself again to where I'm at. So then you'll click on My Profile on the left-hand side and complete or update your information right there. So this helps us get to know you better and will serve as some of the information that goes straight into your application. Next, you'll click on Add or Manage Schools on the right-hand side of your screen. And that will take you to a page where you can affiliate yourself with the school. In other words, you'll want to select the school that you'd like to apply for a grant. You can affiliate yourself with multiple schools. As Christina mentioned earlier, if you're a district level person, like a parent engagement coordinator in the district level, you can select all the schools in your district on this page. You just enter in your zip code and search for your school or district or the schools in your district, and then check the box on the left of the school or schools that you would like to select. If you can't find your school by searching via zip code, it may be that we have your school under a different zip code. For example, if your school has multiple buildings or PO box or different addresses, or it may be that your school is not in our system at all, which is not a problem. You can go ahead to the right-hand side and download a form and email it to us, and then we can upload your school into the system so you can submit an application that way. Once you have affiliated yourself with the school, you can go ahead and apply for the grant. You're ready to go. So then you'll click on Grants on the left-hand side of your screen. Once you've clicked on that, this screen appears, and you'll be able to scroll down to see the available grant opportunities, which then takes you to this screen. it will include the eligibility information that we just discussed, as well as a button to start the application for a single school. So that's the Parent for Healthy Kids grant right there, and you can see that green button there that says start an application for one school. Click on that button to move forward, but I do want to note again that if you are a district level person applying for multiple grants, you will need to submit a separate grant for each school. There, it might be helpful if it's like was mentioned earlier in the webinar, that it's the same project for multiple schools within the district. You may want to enter in all of that project information into a Word document so that you can just easily copy and paste it into each separate application. But there is not a district application for Parents for Healthy Kids grants. As I mentioned there, you can go ahead and type in you enter in each of your school grants there, and once you start the application, you'll see each of the schools that you have affiliated yourself with in that drop-down menu. So click the Go button once you've selected which school you would like to start the grant for to continue. And here's the application. There are several tabs, as you can see they're listed at the top. Make sure you complete all of the required information in each of those tabs, otherwise you will receive an error that you haven't completed it. You can save your work as you progress, and I do recommend saving as often as you can, so you can feel free to slowly work on this over the next few weeks before the deadline comes. And as I mentioned earlier, again, the earlier you work on it, the better it will be, so that we can tackle any technical issues, or you can kind of just take your time and think about any other items that you want to enter into the grant. When you are ready to submit, though, you can just click the Submit button at the bottom of the screen, and once that application has been submitted, you will see that green Grant Submitted message at the top, and you're done. So just to kind of recap the steps that we just covered, log in or register to start into the school portal. Then you'll set up your profile in the My Profile tab, affiliate your school, click on the grants to see what grants are available, and then choose the grant that you want to apply for and begin entering your application. And just wanted to kind of cover a few of the tips that some of these I mentioned as we went along, but to help navigate that school portal technology, because as we all know, technology is great when it works, but it doesn't always, and so starting earlier, as I mentioned, is a great way to help you fix that problem if it does come up. But a couple just tips to hopefully avoid any issues that might occur. Use the most updated version of any of your internet browsers that you're using. As I mentioned, save as often as you can. I do find it helpful, like we talked about, to put answers into a Word document, even if you're just applying for one school and not a full district, and then copy and paste those over into the application. That way you know that you won't lose anything that you've already written. Moving through the application by clicking on the tabs at the top is a great way to navigate through, and then do make sure that you're completing all the responses before submitting, so that you don't see that error box at the top. But if you do see that, it'll show you what error you need to address, and so you can resubmit until all errors have been fixed. So that's application. I will go ahead and now throw it back to Christina, who will walk you through a few more tips.
Okay, thanks, Sean. And Heidi, I think we'll circle back with people with questions after the webinar, because we're kind of getting close to the end here, and I do have a few additional slides that I want to get through. So your grant budget, a few tips when you are developing your budget for your grant project. So note here that all schools must submit a budget of $1,000, and that our portal will not accept funds over the $1,000 grant amount. Funds cannot be used for staffing, but we do see a lot of schools using their grant funding and their budget on items such as materials and equipment, food for taste tests, incentive items, and promotional materials. Funds are dispersed in 2 payments. You will get 65% of your funding upon completion of your terms and conditions, and that will happen at the beginning of the school year. And then 35%, the remaining 35% after the submission of your midterm report in January. If your project does require more funding than our grant provides, please indicate how you'll provide additional funding from other sources to let us know how you will fill that gap. And then, of course, fill in NA for any description of any field where you have a 0, so you will not be spending grant funding. All of those fields do require a response. And then a few other general tips for submitting a successful application. This first resource at the top, the first bullet, which is the application instructions guide, please make sure that you are utilizing this and following this while you are completing your application. This instructions guide provides a checklist, it provides additional language and clarification, and really guides you through the application process. So definitely check that out. We also have a frequently asked questions document that is amazing as well, that will really walk you through those most common questions and concerns that schools have when completing an application. Again, remember that you can apply for a breakfast grant in either a Parents for Healthy Kids or Game On, but you cannot apply for a Parents for Healthy Kids and a Game On. Schools must pick one application, one grant. And then, of course, get creative, be unique, and always be innovative. We love to fund innovative applications. And then some additional information on our technical assistance. With your grant, you'll get so much more than just funding. Action for Healthy Kids state coordinators are with you from the start to make sure you're successful and have all the resources that you need. So please don't hesitate to reach out to them if you have questions about your application and need additional assistance. And we'll provide you that information after the webinar so you know how to get in touch with your state coordinator if you don't know already. Throughout the school year, Action for Healthy Kids also provides you with content-specific webinars that address school wellness best practices and give you ideas and resources. We help to provide a community forum on the Parents for Healthy Kids website, as we had shared earlier, to share and create dialogue from parent to parent. We also have a brand new school health teams discussion page on Facebook where we are sharing updates and trying again to facilitate dialogue from schools that are working through the school health team model to share tips and best practices. We have monthly newsletters that include tips and grant reminders, resources, materials, trainings, suggestions. We really are looking to be a partner with you and your school team throughout the year to help you have a successful project. If you have any additional questions after this webinar or want support in completing your grant application, please make sure you reach out to your Action for Healthy Kids state coordinator, as I mentioned in the previous slide. Again, we will provide this information in a follow-up for you. If you do not have a state coordinator in your state, please email us at schoolgrants@actionforhealthykids.org. We check that email every single day, and we are more than happy to help answer your questions or provide any support. So let's just review what the application deadline so everyone has a clear idea of what the expectations are and when everything is due. The application deadline is Friday, April 6th. No applications will be accepted after that point unless for some reason there is a deadline extension, but you should not plan on there being one. These grants are very competitive. I do encourage you to not wait until the last minute to try to submit your application on our school grant portal. So, you know, we know that like that last week or those last few days right up to the deadline, there are a lot of people on the school portal, which means there tends to be some technology issues. So if you can get in there earlier and get started and submit your application, we definitely suggest that you do. Awarded schools will be notified on Monday, May 14th. Our staff may be following up with you before then to get clarity on your application. So if you hear from us or you hear from your state coordinator before then, please help us and be timely in your response so that we can ensure you have a complete application package. You'll see the other deadlines there if you are awarded for the 2018-2019 school year, and no need to note these down now. This will all be included in follow-up materials. And again, if you're awarded, we'll be communicating these to you over the course of the school year. So again, because we're over time, we're going to get back to you after the webinar today with your additional questions. But we do ask that you follow us on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Flickr, and YouTube for health tips, physical activity games, recipes, and all things school wellness. So you guys, that concludes our webinar today. I know we are a little bit over, but I do appreciate you. We will send out a follow-up email in 2 to 3 business days with a link to the recording and the handouts. And I'd like to thank Sean and Heidi for joining today's webinar as my co-presenters. And I'd like to thank all of our listeners for the things you are doing every day to ensure that our kids are healthy, active, and ready to learn. Good luck with your grant application. We are excited to work with you and your school. Thank you so much for your time and have a wonderful day.